know already what we're going to cover. I'm going to kind of talk about the real estate market, the strength of the market, the historical relative strength of that market, along with some do's and don'ts when you go to sell. Then we're going to have Pat Leung's great tax strategist. And Stephanie, who's the estate attorney, she's going to talk a little bit more about that. I'm just kind of the opening act for these two headliners here. So I'll try to make this as entertaining or useful as possible. So I'm Darryl Jones. I've been selling real estate for over 33 years. I'm Bill. My name is Bill. That's Bill. Anyway, so I wanted to kind of share this with you. And I met these two wonderful ladies years ago, and they're just a wealth of knowledge. I thought, we got to bring this to the public. So I'm just going to delve into first just the numbers of what's causing this historic real estate market that we're in. It's simply a lack of inventory. But I'm just going to quickly go over data. I'm going to be real quick, frankly, and then give it over to them. The lack of inventory right now is just we're at historical lows. So it's a simple supply and demand now. It's not necessarily rocket science. But I'm going to go ahead and delve into that and jump into that right now and share with you just what I mean by that in terms of how low the inventory is. Here is some active listings currently in Placentia. This is one of my greatest fears. But so this is what's driving this market. We are in a very unique market, a market that is not often here, but not often common. Although we've been in it for a few years, we took a little bit of a dip, or went away from when interest rates went up. But now we bounced back, and the market's still very, very good for sellers. I could say that because it's good for really sellers, but it's good for sellers. And it's basically lack of choices, lack of inventory. And this kind of pretty much describes maybe the local cities and then just the county. But as you can see, just 4 years ago, 86 properties on the market just in Placentia. Currently, there's only 26. So for those that are thinking or considering selling, this is what you want to hear. You want to hear low inventory. And that's it. I had a house. I talked a little bit about how the market kind of took a little bit of an adjustment when the rates went up last year, second quarter last year or so. They jumped up from 3 to 6%, more than double, frankly. And to give you the significance of this inventory, how important it is, I had this property in the market in the city of Leung. When that happened, a lot of buyers kind of retracted because they're used to this low payment. I'll share that with you. And then, so the market kind of took a little bit of a dip. Markets aren't straight lines. They don't always straight up or straight across, straight like that, which usually kind of like a road. So I had this one particular house, and when the rates went up, the buyers pulled back. We were trying to have it listed at $899. We couldn't get it. Nobody was willing to pay over $9 for that house. Inventory started dropping pretty rapidly, and we sold it for $1 million. So the point of me telling you that is this inventory, or lack of inventory, is enormously helpful for people for selling. And people always ask me, and I'll cover this a little bit, but maybe I should just jump with it. So I just wanted to go over that inventory. That's a really huge, significant number. And sales, so you see the sales, only 36, 4 or 5 years ago, 24. It seems lower, but with that inventory, it's a good amount of sales. We have what's called a 1 month supply of homes. Normally you would say, 3 months supply would be kind of maybe 3 or 4 months of par market, what we call par market. In other words, it's not buyer's market or seller's market. It's a regular par market. Golfing tournament. Here's also the percentage of the asking price that they've sold from year to year. As you can see, we're getting 103% of the asking price here in 2023, which is pretty significant. That's Placentia. Right at where we are, 1/4 of the homes that were on the market in 2019. That's just enormously low number. In fact, frankly, it's less than that today. I think we're at 16 homes on the market. City of Leung. New sales, so you see the relevance of sales to active listings. 24, 25. Again, that's a selling market. That's a definition. So pretty much an exchange. Not the probably the highest in hindsight. We can go back and look at the data. The highest was probably the first quarter of last year, February of last year. Really, the prices really peaked out. They were really at that. $250 for this house. I think today we probably sell. Well, probably sell for $1 million. It's that significant. This inventory. Yorba Linda, right next door, as you can see, 284 homes just a few years ago compared to just last year. Now this was in August, so at the beginning, the first quarter of 2022 was when it was peak. And to put that all in perspective, probably the bottom of the market, now that we can go back and look at the numbers, it's 2011 into 2011, and since then, I remember showing property and seeing so many options on the market for these buyers. I thought, wow, it's pretty gutsy, because I never try to talk someone into buy or sell. It's not like they can do it. And they've been buying properties and a ton of things on the market. And now in hindsight, they look like geniuses. They got stuff really well. I remember specifically in 2011, a bunch of people started buying them. I've got a lot more calls because all the numbers were on. But anyway, that's past, so we'll move forward. When you look at the sales comparisons, even though there's fewer sales, when you have less inventory, it's actually better. It's better. So that is, of course, the sellers you want to look at. So original price, Belinda, still over 100% of asking price is what the properties are selling for. But that's an average. Obviously, some don't sell for full asking price. Fullerton here, so it's pretty much. I don't know much about other states. I do network with a lot of agents in other states, and theirs doesn't seem. Well, I mean, real estate's very local, first of all, so it's very local. So what's happening here, let's say in Orange County, doesn't mean that's what's happening in San Francisco or Wisconsin or Florida or wherever. So you really want to delve into that local, and that's what obviously going on now. It's just local. Sales price again, we're 104%. We can still sell for over asking price. I mean, that's pretty significant. And here's Orange County. So this encapsulates really that market. We've got basically a third of the homes that run market. So it's a phenomenal time for sales. And because of this, it allows us a rare opportunity where we can really leverage this market. And I'll talk a little bit about that. Look at sales. But again, with inventory, I always look at inventory. That's the most important number, is inventory, because that really means a lot. And there's low inventory, it's incredibly helpful for sellers. So you're still getting over 100% of asking prices all of Orange County. So interesting, to give you an idea of what I was talking about when I talked to you about that price, the house at $899 and then it sold for $1 million. This is what people went through in 2022 when those rates dropped. So, for example, what I'm trying to demonstrate here is someone that could buy at the beginning of 2020, at the end of 2022 as well, for $1,250,000. That same buyer can now only get $795,000. So you see that people realize that. That's a big deal in terms of sellers getting all the equity out of more. So people always ask me this: when is the best time to sell? I get that question probably more than anything, other than leave. That's your question. Best time to sell, unfortunately, they're all asking really what month, what season, when is the best time to sell? And the problem with that, to answer the question, there's no such season or no such month or day or time. It's all predicated on inventory. So there is a best time to sell, but it's not a month or a season. It's when inventory is low. That makes all sense to me. So know that. And I wanted to kind of go over a little bit because people always ask me also, well, if I do get more money from it. So there are some really, and what I've done here for today's presentation is just done some real simple things that you can do that are not expensive at all, relatively speaking. And these may surprise you, maybe if it's not rocket science, but it can make a big difference, believe it, to a house. So one is just, and this again, it sounds simple, but baseboards. A lot of people have the old 1-inch baseboards, baseboards. And just doing that, this creates a better feel. It's not going to be something where a buyer is going to walk in the house and go, I'm buying the house because of that. It's because they just get a better feel when they're in there. They won't even necessarily identify why they have a better feel, but you need these types of really minor updates for the property improvements. If cottage cheese, popcorn ceilings, you're better off removing that. If getting the most money, which obviously typically is the most important part. It'll be worth the cost of doing it. And I want to also tell you that factoring the cost and the return. So I'm not suggesting you spend $100 to get $100 back. You do $100 to get $500 back. So if you have popcorn ceilings, and I actually do know people who do all these things as well. It's not very business. Simple thing like the old light switch covers and electric covers. makes a big difference again, just for the whole feel of the house. Painting never hurts, fresh coat of paint. Again, these are things, and every house is individual because it matters on the house. I mean, for example, I went and saw a house, this list of the house had a 15-year-old kitchen. Frankly, if they would have told me they put it in last week, I would have thought, yeah, it looks like they put it in last week. It's really nice. So the point of me saying that is, it's not obvious that you just definitely put in a new kitchen. Definitely do baseboard. Definitely do flooring. Anything like that. But it would be on an individual basis. If that makes sense. Yes, sir.
Should we let the buyer pick the paint?
No. Well, so what I oftentimes do is I refer to new home builders because the new home builders, everything's data on new home builders. So my point in telling you that is, you go and you ever bought or went to a new home track, you see that they show you the 4 or 5 mile homes, they sell their 300 homes behind it. And all their homes, they don't show you the homes without the fresh paint, without all the upgrades. Why? Because the data shows that when you get a neutral color on there, that's very appealing. It's the new home track steadiness. I visit new home tracks often to determine, see what are the selling colors or what's the style, what's in vogue. And it's better to have that done prior to because people can't imagine, well, I mean, I can't imagine necessarily. I mean, I'll look at the room. It's just so much better, obviously, once it's already done, number one, because they don't have the vision, let's say. And then number two, oftentimes people in today's busy world, when they're too busy, it's already done, and they can just buy it and move in. They're just going to be far, far more likely to buy it.
What external thing?
It depends. That's too. It's a matter if it needs it or not. If it needs it, yes, you should do it. And it's a case by case basis. It's not necessarily something. Yes, always paint the outside of the house. Well, yeah, maybe fine.
And trim.
And trim, yeah. Well, here you go. Mulch and color. The color in your current buildings. We all kind of know that. In general, building, to address your question, generally speaking, you want to put your money towards cosmetics. So let's say you've got $10,000, $20,000 to spend. You plan on investing in your house because it sells for more money, and you need a new let's say you need painting or needs a new air conditioner. The money can go towards only one of those two things. You want to paint. You want to do what's cosmetic, what's visible, things you can see, because that'll cause the buyers to be interested in the house. Not saying you don't have to deal with the essential air, and it also depends if it's hot. I'm not saying you won't have to deal with it, but I'm saying in terms of that investment, you want to put it towards cosmetic things, not internal things. You can deal with internal things, and you probably still need to possibly deal with them. The internal things once we're in escrow, but it's a lot, and you may not. We've been able to negotiate a lot of necessary repairs not to be done, and especially a market like we're in. But the cosmetics, of course, no denying that. So I just wanted to end it with the do's and don'ts. I think this is it. It's it. Again, oftentimes, whenever I sell a house, the people are the boss, like I work for them, and they'll have suggestions. So I typically recommend if getting the most money for your house obviously is the goal. You want to do certain things, which is you want to have a lockbox. You want to be able to easily accessible, make it easily accessible to buyers. The more buyers, obviously, that can get in there and see it, the better chances. I'll give you an example. I've had clients where they say, we'd like to just have showings on the weekend. We do that. And of course, I say, yeah, you can do that. You know what that means. Well, no. That means my life will be easier? Well, no, possibly. But then also, what the problem with that is what happens if the highest paying buyers up from San Diego on a Wednesday, and they want to see your house, and they can't see it, they go into all the other houses. They don't even know they would have bought your house, and we just lost out on the highest paying buyer. So if you're trying to get the highest price for the property, it's to your advantage to allow for this leading show. Now, with that being said, it's your house. You can deny all showings. Obviously, you can do whatever you want. But in terms of getting that price up, it's just a good trait to have. Try to allow showings as frequently as often as possible because you never know when that highest paying price is. So a lockbox and accessibility is kind of the same thing. You want a sign up there. A lot of times people won't want a sign. And I typically ask them why or whatever. If it's not an enormous bill, it's good to have a sign up there. I'm kind of going over things that I hear a lot where people say, we'd rather not do that. So that's one of the recipes, possibly rather simple item. Staging the properties. People, you all know what staging is. Staging is basically what the new home builders do with a lot of homes. They go in there and they bring the furniture in, they get it looking almost pretty. Because the data shows that staged homes sell for 6.7% higher than non-staged homes. Professional photography, this is an example of this. So this house right here, it was listed with another agent, they couldn't sell it, and after the listing expired, they called us, we got it on the market, and this was our photo. So you see the difference in it. I don't know if any of you, I'm sure plenty of you have been online with the house, and you realize that the photos are going to be incredibly important. So those will draw the people in there. Again, all this is obvious stuff. This was that same previous agent's photo of their master bedroom. This is a $2 million house in rural Lincoln. And they couldn't sell it, and we got, here's that same bedroom. So the photos are for one thing and one thing only, to compel people to come see the house. And it's only going to do one of three things. Either going to go, nope, you don't need to see it. Maybe we'll see it. You got to go see it. But this one is for $2 million. Yeah, we don't need to see that one. Here, oh, yeah, we got to see that one. Is that beautiful? So, and the irony is it's the same. So it's really important to do that. To get good photos. And then pricing it is so critically important. I mean, to price it properly. It's a little bit counterintuitive to get as much money. Yes, but
How important are online photos?
it's hugely important. Yeah, very important. Because they're going to help people come or repel people. So they're very important. Pricing is very important too, because regardless of, you do everything else right. Everything else is done right, and the price is wrong. It's just, it won't work. I'm not saying never give it away, obviously. And I'm saying you get the best price for the house. Because another thing we're seeing right now is the buyers also know what type of market they're in. So they're looking at days on market. We've noticed that the days on market we accumulate, and it's more, it used to be, you see something for 3 or 4 months, like, oh, that's something wrong with that house. Now it's more like 3 or 4 weeks going on the market that long, and it hasn't sold, and that's oftentimes what overpricing is do. So if you overprice it, it takes longer to sell, it doesn't sell, and then it stays on longer. It's almost like you can't unring that bell. It's already hit the market. You have this window for a couple of weeks that it's on the market. So really leverage the house. I'm talking about getting as much money as possible too for the house. I'm not talking about the selling it quickly, for the selling it quick sake. But to get as much money as possible, you can strike when that high. You have your best ability to negotiate with the beginning of it's on the market, because the buyers didn't see that it's on the market for 2 or 3 or 4 months. Any questions so far?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, what's happening with people who are working remote at home?
Well, you know, one of the cool parts about, there's such a cool part about COVID, that one of the byproducts is they've got a new app called Showing Time, and it's just we continue to do this in the past COVID, because what it allows us to do is market the home, and let's say, you know, Jim sees it and says, okay, I want to call this agent, Fred, I'd like to see this house. Okay, when do you want to see it? Wednesday at noon. Okay. They go on the website, they look Wednesday at noon, and they click on there, and the homeowner, so you get a text saying, hey, Fred wants to see it Wednesday at noon or whatever time, and you say yes or no. So I guess my point is you get alerted, number one, so you can control that. You're not letting it. Another thing we've seen too, to help remedy that, because I think that one, is open houses also are very effective, and it will also cause your life to be easier, because you get more showings on that Saturday and Sunday opposed to that Friday at 6 o'clock. Oh, we can see it tomorrow. So typically, if it's something like that, we do appointment only, and we try to just persuade people to see it on the weekend, or when it's convenient for you. Ultimately, you are the boss of your house, so it's not like, but I'm just here to say that if getting the most money, we want to try to push to allow as many changes as possible. We definitely have a lot of content on that. So, pricing, open houses. I talked about open houses. Yeah, I mean, the stat was, I want to say it was something as high as 70%, over 50%, over half of people saw that house that they bought at the open house. It's an enormous number. And I know why. It's because, you know, where's water flow? It's half of this resistance. Where do people buy come to the house? If it's easy to show, easy to see, they're going to come. That just increases. Another thing, and the final thing, is something that was really, really happening a lot the last few years. people who are not leveraging this market and is not running counter offers, not doing it. It's something that happened. I had a buyer looking, actually here in Red, went and saw this house. They were asking $950. They loved this house. It wasn't on this another agency. They wrote an offer on it. They wrote an offer $100,000 over the asking, so $1,050,000. And I checked with the agent, said, yeah, we got it done with financials, they had 40% down, beautiful, beautiful offer. And the agent said, we got it, checked out a couple days, ain't any response yet, the room, and the day after that, she shoots me a text, says, oh, the seller decided to go to another buyer. There's nothing I can do, the seller, her client, decided that. The problem with that is, how do you know if the buyer's not going to pay more? The answer is you don't. You don't unless you give a counter. You don't assume. Never assume someone won't pay more. Let's find out. So the reason I'm bringing this up, and you may or may not be thinking, why are you talking about this? It was happening so much when we had, it's not uncommon to get 10 offers, 20 offers. We got billions of them. Over 80 offers once. I think I'm down. Oh, it was over 100 offers? We responded to everything. Poor her. But you respond to everything. And the reason why you do that is because out of those 100 offers, of course, you don't know who's going to pay the highest. Oftentimes, the initial highest offer, let's say you rent your office for 1-300, the initial highest offer doesn't end up being your highest paying buyer. So if you don't, and a lot of agents will think, look, I'm not trying to go through all the agents out there, there's a lot of great agents out there, but just count the top 3. I hear that a lot. We're just counting the top 3. We're only counting the top 3. Well, there's been so many times where the 5th or 6th or 8th initial offer ended up being 15th initial highest paying buyer. Ended up being the highest paying buyer once the negotiations start. So you always want to respond to everybody that's nice enough to write something off and present you an offer. You want to give them a counter. It'll make you a lot of extra. Does that make sense? So I think that's it for me. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Well, actually, counter offer, the buyer counter offer or the seller counter offer?
I'm sorry, let me expand on that. The seller,
So
most
you
people
say,
put their
okay,
phone-
there was a house for sale near us, it was $750, of course I have to look at it, and it's a junk. It's terrible. And the lady goes, oh, it was software, and I'm like, what? So, like, if I'm the buyer, and I say, ooh, $750,
Right.
and I say $750, then you just say yes or no.
No, what we do there is we counter. How do you legitimize the response to the buyer? We naturally say, well, you're asking $750. I gave you $750. Yeah. Why don't you just take the price off? You let them know, well, we have other buyers, if you will. Blah, blah, blah. You obviously don't sell to one buyer. So, and not only that, the culture of the buyers right now, they realize that it's a seller market. They're kind of expecting it. I can tell you right now, anybody who's thinking about selling the house, I can tell you right now, your highest paying buyer is going to be a buyer that's already lost out on 5 or 6 other houses because they're ready now to pay what's required to get that house. So
As a seller, you figure out how much.
So I'll give you an example. So typically when we get to, let's say, 3, 4, 5 offers, depending, that will typically happen easily within the first week. We're going to have a hierarchy of offers, our best offer, and let's say 3 other offers. So the strategy would be, we know what our best offers, and we don't know for sure that these people aren't going to be, that's going to be our best offer. Maybe or end up being our best offer, so we don't want to push that one away. So we counter these 3 first, and we use a form that's called a seller multiple counter offer, which means it's not binding. It allows you to counter people multiple times. It's all above board. This is all honest legal stuff. It's not a budget. So you counter those 2, let's say, at a different, higher price. And based on their answer, let's say 2 take it, 1 drops off, that's fine. Then we go to this one and counter that one higher. In the meantime, we're still getting other offers. We just keep building it up, and you keep be patient. And it requires a lot of, the key too is communication with the buyers. You want to talk to those buyers often. So when my listing, for example, I let the agents know ahead of time, look, you will absolutely get a response. You will not get a no. You'll either get a yes or a counter. It's almost never a yes at the beginning. But I want them to stay engaged. If it's not, but then you look at other houses, so we keep them engaged. So it's a constant communication with me and the buyer's agents. And then I explain to them, they will get a response, and then I just be patient. So up front, by the time up front, it's not quite as stressful. And then we always get them counter offers. And then we just simply keep building it. And we'll see, we start seeing people fall off. Because it's funny, people oftentimes think that realtors are appraisers, and know what that house is gonna sell for. Well, we don't. We know ballpark, but we don't do it all. It's impossible. It's literally impossible. So the only way to know what it will sell for is get it on the market and do it properly, and then you'll know what the highest price can be. Does that make sense? So there's these forums we developed a few years back, and they allow us to counter multiple people at the same time. So we get data. It's almost like playing poker and knowing a couple cards they get. You're ahead of the game there. So it's just a really good way to leverage the market in your favor. And again, we don't have a gun in anyone's head. Everyone knows what they're paying. It's all volunteer stuff. But it's just clearing a path to where the buyer who's going to pay the most money will evolve and will get that highest price for the house. Another thing we do too is we try to get a backup offer too in place, and that's easier in this market too. And it's critical because whenever you go into escrow, it's typically subject to some contingencies such as loan and appraisal and inspection. Those are the three biggies that cause people to really apply. And those inspections especially, oftentimes the buyer won the battle, got in there, they paid this, like one of my says the ether wears off, and they go, oh my goodness, and they do their inspection, they're going to come back and say, we want $15,000 in credit in lieu of windows. And well, okay, but we got a backup offer, and this agent just called me twice yesterday to see if you guys back down. So my point in telling you that is there's a method that you can implement that will provide for a much smoother transaction as well. And one of those is try to get a backup offer. In this market, you get that. So then when you go to that buyer, and that buyer's agent say, hey, look, we got a backup offer, all of a sudden, oh, yeah, okay, we're fine, we don't need the 15, we're good. Let's say 15, that makes sense. That kind of explain a little bit better. All right, well, without any other questions, it's time for the question. Yes. Oh, it's the ladies' room, right? Oh.
As a past bond trader in the city of Bray, where do you think rates are going?
You should tell us.
I could.
Well, I tell you, I've been doing this for as long as I can. I know the answer to that, even though the answer is nobody knows.
So the Fed's coming out tomorrow.
Well, yeah, and as you already know, the funny part too is when the Fed does make a decision on either reducing or lowering it, that in itself doesn't typically adjust the rates. The rumor does it ahead of time. Well, oftentimes, let's say they think the Fed's going to raise it a half a point. So everybody, all the experts already published all that news that it's going to be raised probably half a point. Well, the rates will actually go up on the rumor, and then if they go and have the Fed meets and they do a half a point, the rates typically don't even change. If they do a quarter point, they actually would drop, even though literally the Fed raised the rates. If they go more than what's expected, then you see the rates climb up.
How are rates affecting supply and demand?
Well, I tell you, it took a big. Last summer, like I was mentioning, it caused a lot of buyers to back out, back up, because all of a sudden their payment doubled, almost doubled. So the market took a little bit of hit last probably quarter. Third quarter, fourth quarter for sure last year. But now, and that's why I showed inventory, because inventory is everything. We can talk about rates, and rates aren't good for the market, this, that, and the other, but if rates are high and inventory is still low, well, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but it really doesn't matter. I mean, it won't be the extreme seller's market, it's less of the seller's market, the rates going up, as long as inventory stays low, but it's when inventory stays low. You're good. I would rather see rates go up to 10, and this is just me talking, go up to 10, and inventory reduced by half. That would be better for homeowners than rates to go down to 4 and inventory climb. That's probably not going to happen because when rates go down to the doesn't. Does that answer your question? Yes, sir.
I got a question for you. The house sales in my neighborhood, I don't know the percentage of it, so I like that 103. But the house sells and everybody wants to sell their house for more, but the professional, I mean, what's like the effective method on this for the house with the sales price? Is it high? Is it above the last comp? What's going on right now for pricing?
Well, it depends on when that happened, when the sale happened. Did it happen in closed escrow 3 weeks ago or 5 months ago?
I want to say 3 months. Yeah, 3 months ago.
Okay.
Totally high.
What's your question? I'm sorry.
What's the best price? I mean, is it like listing high? Is it listing?
No, you're better. You don't want to price it high. Well, so let's say it's sold for $1 million. If it's sold for $1 million, something sold for $1 million, I was meeting with you and you were okay with it. I would probably suggest that the comp was $1 million, pricing around $950, $999. Again, you don't have to do this, and I'm not suggesting you sell it for that at all. It's very counterintuitive, it can be counterintuitive. You price it aggressively, because what happens is all the buyers become so much more enthusiastic about that house. And once they've written an offer, they're psychologically, they're moving in that house. Anybody who owns a house and written a house and wrote an offer, you're already thinking, okay, well, Jimmy can, that's their room, that's my office, that just is very compelling. It's obvious, I suppose. Once they write an offer, and that's what the pricing it aggressively will cost, then their juices are flowing and they're ready to go, and they end up paying a lot more. So you're far better off. It's counterintuitive. People ask me all the time, how do I get the best price? They'll ask, well, if I want $1 million, I'm going to ask for $1 million too. And well, okay, that's good, but unfortunately, that's not what the data shows. The data shows for that $1 million, let's say it's 1/1 million, you're better off, oddly enough, pricing that house at $950, getting multiple offers. By golly, it's probably going to sell for over $1 million. Does that kind of make sense? It's hard to look at and kind of digest it. Believe me, I sold a house of mine a couple years ago, and I had to eat my own medicine. It was a little challenging at first. It seemed so low, but then we put it on, got all the offers, and it got bid it up to the highest seller that model. So there is a method. It does work. I mean, it's not. This is not stuff I give up. I first came and saw this notion of pricing. I mean, I saw a house, actually in Brea, Country Hill, same floor plan. One house was beat up, rental, been a rental forever. They priced it really low, probably properly. The other one was done up really nicely, really nice. They priced it really nice. Well, after a few weeks, this one had so many offers, not my listing, neither of them was my listing. This one got bidded up close to almost what they were asking. So it was not even close. So I mean, it's a very effective strategy that we see. Does that answer your question somewhat? But it's all on an individual basis. So it's going to be. We also look at inventory. So, for example, if I come over and look at the house, there's a $1 million comp or whatever. We also want to look at inventory. So then we always track inventory while it's on the market. So oftentimes we'll list the house today, but those won't go on with it for various reasons. But we want to track that market, and I track the inventory of the market daily. So as long as inventory is low, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Any other questions at all?
It is actually a very good strategy.
Oh, okay. How do you know? What? Well, it's time for Pat. I'm telling you, you guys that came here for the tax strategist and the estate attorney, these are the headliners. Opening act, these two ladies. So smart, so knowledgeable. They're going to share hopefully some really good ideas and things you can do to save money on your taxes and all the taxes that are coming out. But I'm going to get out of here.
It's really hard to follow Darryl's talks about such a lively discussion that here we're going to talk about death and taxes. So, good evening. My name is Pat Leung. I am a tax strategist. So just like that title suggests, I'm here to help you beat the tax man. Okay, so there's a number one misunderstanding. Hey, if it's my primary residence, I sell it, I don't pay taxes. Wrong. Okay. So I'm going to take you through a journey, tax journey, if you will, and taxify all of you guys. But I'll tell you, this is my formal corporate background. I'll share a bit of my personal background with you, and how I stumbled upon tax and found my calling in tax. So one day after college, high school, I come home and I found my parents' tax papers on the dining room table. Nosy, took a look, I found mistakes. Of course, being a kid, really, seriously, it can't be a serious mistake. Probably a numerical mistake or a grammatic spelling error. And then so I thought, well, how silly, you pay somebody to do this, and it's wrong. And my parents were immigrants, so seriously, they make no money, and their tax returns are maybe a handful of pages. I see a handful of pages, and said, how hard can that be? It's a handful of pages and a few numbers. So I go to the library, and that's a state need. They have printed publications, now everything's online. So I asked the librarian, I go, are those free? So get your kids, don't let them have friends, and they'll start meeting higher responsibilities. Right, so. I'm not pressing this. Pardon. Oh. You're smart.
Hold it.
This is why I learned that I come out here. Okay, so when we think about selling, of course, Darryl talks about selling, but there's all other exit options. One, we could leave it to our heirs, beneficiaries, and there's two ways to do that, right? We can gift it to them, or they can inherit it. Or we can do what Darryl's been doing all these years, selling. So when we sell, of course, I think about taxes, not everybody do. There's the home gain exclusion, and then for your primary residence, and if it's a rental property, there's a very, very common strategy called the 1031 lifetime exchange. And I'll go through the plus and minuses and also the mistakes, right? We're here to learn mistakes from others, not to repeat them. So here's a hidden time bomb with gifting, okay? When we gift a property or an asset to anyone, what happens is then that individual takes our basis. They don't get what's called step-up basis. Are you guys familiar with what a step-up basis is? Is this a room that nobody says anything?
Yes.
No.
Step-up basis is where I own a house and I designate a certain beneficiary, put in a trust. Of course, Stephanie's going to talk about trust. When I die, my beneficiary will inherit the house and get what's called step-up basis. Say I bought it for $10. It's now worth $1 million. My beneficiary will inherit it, and they will get a step-up basis at $1 million. Say they hate the house, they get Darryl to sell it. Darryl sells it for $1.5 million, and instead of, that's nothing. So they're going to pay tax on the $1.5 million minus their $1 million step up, and that's their step-up basis, and they only pay tax on the $500,000. They don't hire Darryl, they go and sell at $1 million, their basis is $1 million, they walk away with no capital gains tax, but they do get all that tax. Yes.
Isn't it a zero capital gains within the first 2 years or the first year?
Yeah,
Because the
there's,
step up is based
on the
in
time of
that
death.
one, yeah, on the time table.
Yeah, there's no 2-year,
It's if you kept the house for 5 years and it grows after
no,
that.
I'll get to that, great question, you're mixing that with another question. But in this step up, I have to die. Yeah, that's the ultimate sacrifice, I have to die for my beneficiary to get that step up basis. Because I was chatting this with one of my staff, and she goes, well, I have a trust, and my kids are gonna get the step up. I go, no, not so fast, you gotta die first. Getting a trust done ain't gonna give you step up basis, you have to die. So some parents are, I'm making that so fun.
It's true.
Some parents are so anxious to get their kids in first, like Asian parents. I'm gonna die, I'm just gonna put my kid's name on the house right now, so I don't have to deal with this. Well, guess what? When they do that, they have gifted that asset away. So let's take here. Say 1980, John bought the house for $100. Now we're 2021. John gives the house to the kids, Jim, Jack, and Jill, for $1 million, and it's valued at $1 million. Okay. So here's what happened: kid sells it. 2 years later, kid sells at $1.1 million. Their gain is going to be $1 million because they inherit John's original basis. They don't get the step up because John hasn't died yet. Okay. So in this case, the kids are going to sell it and get hit with $1 million capital gain. 30%, that's $300,000. When they've only kept the house, and this, just like your situation, they've only kept the house for 2 years. Now, compared to if they inherit the house, in this case, same scenario, John bought it for $100, 1980. 2023, John dies via trust, leaves the house to the kids. Now the kid gets the step-up basis. They sell it also at $1 million, they walk away with no tax. best gift from taxman. But you can't die. You have to have a living trust. Okay? And then upon death, you gotta get to Darryl to get an appraisal. And that's gonna set the step-up basis.
You have to have a living trust? You just have to have a will for that.
That's a Stephanie thing, okay? I'm not gonna play lawyer. Yes, yes, sir. Somebody have a question?
I do.
Go ahead.
So you said that it has to be appraised at the time of death. So how much time do you have? Because I'm not gonna make that phone call right away.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't understand that, and maybe a year, 2 years later, they go, oh, we got this house via inheritance, and we want to sell it, and as your accountant, I'm gonna say, well, what's your step-up basis? And at that point, that's when we get Darryl, and Darryl can also do historical, right?
Yeah, evaluation.
Yeah, historical evaluation, and then value it around the date of death. And so it doesn't mean you have to get immediately, like, when you lose a loved one, the last thing you want to think about is how to deal with the tax. We understand that. Yes, sir.
Couple of questions, both for this and the gifting part. So for this one, if it's not in living trust, how is that treated in tax?
Stephanie will go through it, but here's my quick answer. I have a house, I don't have a trust. When I die, here's what happens. Probate court comes in and helps me determine who my beneficiaries are based on a hierarchical, what do you call it, family?
It's a chart.
Yeah, there's like a
literally
family.
a chart. And it
Yeah.
goes like, if you're married to your spouse is already gone, it goes to your kids. Your kids have kids, goes to their kids. Nothing below you, then it goes above. If nothing above, then it goes to the side. And it'll keep going out, like however many times until it gets to someone.
So probate court will come in and help you at a pretty steep cost, okay? And it is a percentage of the market value of the property. And it might land on the same hands, it might not, but that's what happens without the trust. And on that story, true story, I had a client with a dozen rental properties, single lady, she goes, Pat, I hate my family. I hate my family.
My fault.
I hate my family. I do not want them to inherit my assets. All the stuff is going to go to charity. Well, that's wonderful. We have a trust. No, I don't. Guess where it's going to go without the trust? The probate court's going to come in, determine who are your family, look at the lineal hierarchy, and it's going to go to those people that she hates. That's what happens without the trust.
And then the state's gonna take a big chunk.
There you go. Yes. Yes.
Sorry, can you go back to the gifting slide?
Yeah, Asians do a lot of that.
Well, might not be a real scenario. The capital
Yeah, your
tax,
friend, yeah.
30%, that's the Fed and the state.
Correct, federal and state, yes. People, when you read the headlines, capital gains tax, 15%, they forget California. California does not have capital gains tax concept. Everything is at your ordinary income tax rate, and guess what the highest rate is? 13.3. So, federal capital gains tax is not capped at 15. In fact, it is 20% depending on your income. And plus, don't forget the net investment tax, 3.8%. So between that and California, say 10% California, you're easily 33.3%. So that's why I just rounded off to 30%.
Biden was trying to make it 40% a couple of years ago.
Yeah, so by the way, this is true today,
Yeah.
and then when Congress changes the law tomorrow, this is all inaccurate.
So one follow-up question. You know how you could give somebody $14,000 a year,
Mhm.
tax free?
Yeah.
Does that,
It's
something
kind of hard to
practical?
give the house, it's kind of hard to give the house in like little.
No, but say, 1980, you gifted tax.
Shares on the
I
house.
mean, doesn't that, accumulated?
You get the door,
Yeah.
and then make sure you get the windows.
Yeah. Doesn't that, that cannot be counted on.
It's hard to gift fractional shares. of your primary. For rental properties, yes, this can be done. Talk to me. There's some advanced planning strategies that I don't have time to cover. Yes, sir.
Sorry, real quick question. So the problem, so John is gonna give the property to the kids. Is there any ramifications on John if he gives that?
Oh, yeah, great question. So you think that by, the kids getting it, the kids are not gonna pay tax on it? The flip side here is John has to file a gift tax return and claim that he gifted away $1 million and potentially paying gift tax on that $1 million.
So he has to pay taxes essentially before he
He
does.
may, yes, he may.
Right, and okay, so what point, so let's say he does that, when does he put that in the trust? Does he do it before or after that?
Well, hopefully he doesn't do that.
Well, I mean, he has to do it before he dies, I mean, but.
No, yes, so we'll definitely talk about that trust part. This is where the gray area, I know enough to be dangerous and then leave it to your professional.
I need to lie to my parents.
It's time to be a good son now. Time to be a good son. So this is the 2 out of 5 year that you're talking about, sir. Here is a home gaming solution, one of the best gifts from Uncle Sam. Here's how this works. Sounds very plain and simple. Home gaming exclusion, section 121 of the Internal Revenue Code says, if I live in this house and I own this house for at least 2 years and I sell it, I get up to $250,000 tax-free gain. So, popularized by media, $500,000 for a couple, right? Husband and wife, live in it, own it, they sell it, they get up to $500,000. Let me throw a curveball in here. The tax code doesn't cap it at $500,000. It caps it at $250,000 per account. So how many of us are here? Like 40 of us?
I don't know, 5,000.
Yeah. 40 of us in here. So let's say all 40 of us, we go and we buy a 40-unit apartment that Darryl's gonna buy for us. 40-unit apartment. We each live in our own unit. So we each live there. We all own it. We sell it. Each of us are going to get $250,000. That's a $10 million tax free. But we all have to live there and own it together. We have to all get along. Okay. That's, yes.
Can that be on a large property with individual houses? One
Great
lot,
question. What, one block? You're living in the whole block?
one lot, no
Oh,
lot,
lot.
like let's say a 10-acre lot and you have 20 homes, but all 20 are family or whatever.
Yeah, so then again, who's on title? And our family on title?
All 20,
Yeah, all bought in together, not gifting at the back end.
right?
Okay, so some people get very cute and smart and creative, and they go, well, I'm gonna now gift my, show 19 kids in county, gift 19 kids, put them on the name, and now we got 21 head count. Well, okay, when they didn't buy in at the front end, and now, somewhere down the line, I add Jack, Joe, Jill, and all these J-name kids on there, and now the parents are gifting that portion to the kids. Okay, so however much is left, the portion that they gift, that's where gift tax comes into play. So it doesn't mean, but they all have to buy in, like my example, we all 40 of us go buy in together, we all live there together, we all own it together for at least 2 years. Yes, sir.
So if you buy a house for $200,000, you make improvements of $300,000, you sell it for $1 million, there's no capital gains.
Yes, so then assuming that there's husband and wife and each person gets $250,
That's
Yes.
no line.
so what if I moved out? Let's focus on the bottom section. Excuse me, this is a 5-year timeline. I live in there first 2 years, lived there first 2 years, I move out. and I rent it out year 3, 4, 5. And now I sell it. The code says, from the date of sale, you look back, if I've lived there for at least 2 years out of the last 5, I will still qualify for that. So therefore, I could technically move out of my home, rent it out for 2, 3 years, let it ride the market, sell it, and I could still get the home exclusion. First,
So income properties are different. What if I move out of my primary residence today into an income property and for 2 years live in that property?
Yes.
Sold my whole primary residence because it's the last 5 years. Get this exclusion, and then if I turn around and sold my new primary residence
you can only do this once every 2 years,
every 2 years.
24 months to be exact. So I have a client like that right now. They moved out of the old home, they're in a new home, and we have 2 properties now that qualify, technically that qualify for the exclusion, and we're now running the math to see, okay, you can only do this once every 2 years. Which one is going to give you the best bang for your buck right now? And then once we sell this, you can wait 2 more years and do it again. Yes, yes.
You get the 250,000 excluded. You would have to buy another house.
No, you don't. Yeah. What you're thinking about is pre-1987 law. Yes. Where the old law, you sell it, you got 2 years, you buy something else, and then you keep kicking the can, almost like a 1031 for a primary residence. You keep kicking the can. 1997, they got rid of that. It's now this law, section 121. Yes, sir.
And the outlets have changed since 2017.
The 2018 tax reform.
Yeah.
Not on the 250,000 exclusion. There is some curveball in there. Now, what if I turn my residence into a rental? So, say I bought the house, I live in there, like what Corey says, I moved to another house, I live in there, and I just keep doing, and then now I've got like a dozen houses that I play musical house with, and like you're laughing, I have a client who does that in San Diego, and I have to follow, like, where are you now this year? And then one year she decides to go back and she goes, no, I feel I have lived there for 2 years now, and I've owned it my whole lifetime, and now I want to sell it and get the home gain exclusion. And that's so fast. About 15 years ago, this new law came into place where my $250,000 tax-free gain is now limited. What they're going to look at is the denominator would be my total years of ownership. So a whole lifetime is 30 years, say. And the numerator is the number of years as a resident. So when she keep playing musical house, we have to count those when she was not, when she was, living there as a resident. That ratio, apply that to 250, that's her gain, that's her tax gain. So, taxman gets smart.
What if she had moved back into that house first for 2 years?
Yeah, again, because it's been rented, you kind of tainted that, yeah. See, in order to not taint that, you have to get rid of it within the 5 years. And once you go beyond that, which she did, and then she decided, like, stay year 10, she goes back in, and she does 2 more years, it's like doing time. For your house to get this tax-free gain, it doesn't work now because the government got smart and they implemented that new law. So, in Corey's instance, let's say, he had a single family, he sold it, and then he buys into a 4-plex with 1 unit that, owner occupied. Now we got 3 units rented. Well, the 250 tax-free only applies to that 1 unit, so 1 of 4. So what do we do with the other 3? We could do what's called a 1031 exchange. There's nothing stopping us from using more than 1 tax code. Section 121 for the home gain exclusion, for that 1 unit that you live in, the other 3 that was rented out, you could do a 1031, both at the same time. Pretty cool. So
Now explain the 1031.
1031, great. It is a replacement of a investment property, a rental property, you sell it, you exchange it for another investment rental property, and that tax gain or that tax bill, you kick that can down the road. It's not eliminated. You're kind of just kicking it down the road until you die. We're back to death. Now, you do eliminate that bill and it gets
It has to be in-kind property.
Yeah, in-kind is very interesting. In-kind is very, very, it's very like loosey-goosey or widespread. Real property, as long as it's real property, so I can do exchange a condo for a single-family residence, exchange a condo for apartment for a retail center, warehouse, storage unit, mobile home parks, farmland. The farmland itself, not the farm business, the land itself. So as long as it's real estate, it is actually very open-ended to what like-kind is. Like-kind, however, is not another investment fund that has real estate, because at that point, I'm selling real estate, I'm selling a building in exchange for an interest in the fund that owns the building. So that's not like-kind.
And are there limitations, and I meant in kind as well as far as price?
Oh, yeah.
So you can't do a
Yes.
1031 on a $2 million property and buy a $4 million property.
You can trade up. So the two key things with 1031, when I sell it, two things have to happen in order for me to kick the tax can down the road. I have to trade up, meaning if I sell it for $1 million, I gotta buy something for at least $1 million or more. All of my equity has to roll into the new property. So I have to roll all of my equity into the new property. Doesn't mean I can do partial, that means I'm gonna pay tax on what I don't roll over. And it's also not I'm gonna go through some top mistakes. It's also not a one-to-one property. So meaning, if I sell $1 million, example, real life example, I could write a book about my clients. I have so many stories. True example, client sells a San Jose property for $2 million. I mean, it's not fancy, okay? In San Jose, you guys complain about $800 an hour dump. You go to San Jose and you get a $1.5 million dump. So she sells the property for $2 million. She exchanged it to like 15 Florida homes. Okay. So I don't remember what the price difference was. You just have to trade up and all of the equity rolls into that. There's several rules that will let you do more than a one-to-one exchange. So it's very interesting. Now there is a time limit from the date of sale. I have 45 calendar days to identify what I'm buying. So you can't say everything under the MLS. You actually have to list exact property. Then from the date of sale, 45 days to identify what I'm gonna buy, 180 days to close on the property. Close meaning, title, exchange hands. So that causes a lot of stress, right? Like you just sold something, now you gotta find property, and if you go back to the pandemic years where things were just, houses were flying off the shelves like t-shirts, it's very stressful.
Typically, you would do that in advance. You'd have a property that you wanted, you wouldn't sell it and then look for a property necessarily.
Right, ideally, yes.
And is there a tax advantage or that you could transfer your tax base, your property tax, if you're in the same state or the same county? Is that one of the reasons that you would do something like that? Also is to
Not,
maintain a tax base, property taxes?
not quite, no.
No?
Not quite. No, you're thinking about for,
Your primary.
yeah, your primary residence where you port your property tax.
It doesn't work.
No, not with 1031, no.
Maybe I just chime in a little bit, because you could do the reverse exchange. And oftentimes, that's when you buy the house first, and then go sell the investment property. Costs a little bit more, a few $1,000 depending on prices, but it's a little less stressful in the current climate that we're right? So then you can kind of be patient, wait for, let's say, a deal or a good property that you can actually get. You can buy it and then go and sell. Is that correct, or is that what you do?
Right, yeah. So what I described as a forward exchange, I sell it, I sell my old property, identify the new ones, close on the new one. Very, very stressful. But sometimes, another real life example, client found something they want to buy, just like your situation, but the seller's not gonna wait for you forever in case your house fell off the market. So in their case, they were forced to do what's called a reverse exchange. So instead of being selling the old house, my first step now is buying the new investment property. I tie it up, now I have to do a QA, get my qualified engineering company to tie up that property. The tricky part is getting a loan for that property. Then I have 45 days to identify what I'm gonna sell, which is easy, I already know what I'm gonna sell. And then 180 days to again wrap up that transaction. So I gotta go through the rest pretty fast. Like-kind exchange, on the surface of it, sounds really easy. We've seen so many time bombs with like-kind exchange. And what you're talking about, like-kind properties, here's a list of them. Some of them are not so common, DST, Delaware Statutory Trust. So it's pretty cool. What is not like-kind exchange? You cannot do that on primary residence. Right? Primary residence folks get the 121 exclusion. If you're at a point where, like another true story, this elderly lady comes to me, they have the house in Laguna Beach, I kid you not, $50,000. What is it worth now? Millions, right? So, if she sells it, there's no joke, I mean, $250,000 is just a little dent in the big amount of profit she's gonna make. So in that situation, what she could do is move out, rent it, season it with actual rental years. So now then she can do the 1031.
How long does she have to rent it for?
2 years.
Is it 2 years or is it just the intent?
No, let's not push the line, Corey. Don't bring me cuttings.
So it has to be around for 2 years, right?
Ideally, what you're thinking about is a 1031 rule where, you want to season it 2 years before and 2 years after. But there are ways, and my point is that there are ways to mitigate taxes when you sell a property, whether it be a primary residence or rental property. And 1031 is not always the answer, sorry. I have helped clients sell a property, not do a 1031, no taxes, no joke. Last story, one of my youngest couple, they very young in their 30s, they lived on a ramen noodle diet. Their strategy was to buy 2-3 unit homes in Long Beach, owner occupied, so they get 3% down, and then live in there for 1 year, move to the next one, and they keep doing it. Now they've got about 10 of those, and finally they're at a point where they sold last year, and their gain, their profit was $600,000. At 30% rate, that's a $200,000 tax bill. They don't want it, they're like, Pat, we need the cash. We're not gonna do another 1031. I'm like, okay, they got the cash, but they also have some other properties. We did another strategy, which I don't have time to talk about. Instead of writing a $200,000 check to the government, we got them a $30,000 refund. True story. Here's my contact info, and gotta leave it to Stephanie.
Okay, I don't know how to follow those two because, I'm like the only one who brought notes just in case. But, my name is Stephanie Kitzes. I'm an estate planning and business attorney. I've been practicing for 26 years. And,
You started at 10, right?
yeah, I was at this networking thing and we all stand around in this big circle and everybody was supposed to state my name and then how long you've been practicing. So they're going around the circle, right? Oh, I'm so-and-so, I've been practicing for 3 years. Oh, I'm so-and-so, I've been 10 years. They get to me, I'm like, oh, gosh, 26 years. But I have done business since the beginning. About 3 years in, I had a client who I had done all these business deals, and he had, every family's different, okay? This guy's family was very complex. He had wives, he was a wife, he had an ex-wife, he had an ex-wife, he was married like numerous times. The ex-wives had kids, some of which he adopted officially, some of which he did not. Some kids had addiction issues, some kids did not. And he had this, multi-layered business strategy. And I'm like, we had him going, he was starting to make big money. I'm like, you gotta get your estate planning done, this is gonna be crazy if something happens to you. He's like, all right, I'm like, I'm gonna get you a referral, because I've never done it before. And he looked at me, and I swear, he just laughed in my face. I'm like, I don't think this is funny, like, your family's gonna be in a mess, right? And he's like, no, what's funny is you think that I'm gonna go try to explain my family to another attorney. He's like, you've gotta go learn how to do this. And I'm like, I've never done it before. And he's like, we'll take a couple months to figure it out. So I did. I took every NCLE continuing education class possible, read every estate planning book. And then I started to think about it, and it makes sense, right? I help people make money. I wanna help them, money end up where they want it to end up. So he was my first estate planning client, and I've been doing it ever since, so it's about 23 years. So still doing both, still helping people with businesses and then doing the estate planning on the other side. So estate planning, I think, who is it for? Is it because, like, this guy didn't want him to leave a mess? Or do you know that you have family members that are gonna have problems with each other? Everybody has their own reason, and it's not always the same reason. So why did you come today? Could have been for Pat, could have been for Darryl, or it could have been because you're trying to figure out how, when you pass away, you can give your family comfort, assurance of what you want to be done, and things like that. Everybody's got a different reason. Sometimes it's peace of mind if you know where your assets are going to end up. Sometimes it's because you don't want to pay estate taxes, and I'll get into that more. Or maybe it's because you're afraid that when you're incapacitated because you've seen an elderly relative with dementia or something like that, or they can't speak for themselves anymore, and they didn't say ahead of time how they wanted to be treated. And so they're kind of at the mercy of who's out there. And that can be very scary and very sad to see. So any of the reasons are good, right? Any of the reasons means you need to do it. The thing to think about is who you're planning for. I've had clients walk in and say, why would I do it? I'm gonna be dead, I don't care. Like, let them deal with the mess, you know? And there's something to that. And some people, like, really have that kind of, like, they're angry at their family, and so they really feel that way. But then, like Pat, I think, was saying earlier, that her client wanted that her money not to go to her kids, but to go to charity. So you don't want to leave that. If you want to stick it to your kids or stick it to somebody else, then at least control where you want it to go, right? Because otherwise, I've had clients, or I've seen, not clients of mine, but I've seen people work 30, 40, 50, 60 years so hard. You know, you can tell their lifetime. They started with nothing. And their stuff ends up going to legal costs and just comes flying out the window. Just sad. Their life counted. So, when was the last time, you have to ask yourself, when was the last time you reviewed your existing plan?
That is, if there is a plan.
Everybody has a plan. if you're here and you've never done a will, you've never done a trust, you've never done a power of attorney, let me tell you, you have a plan. And it's what the state tells you it's gonna be. And it's the probate judge who's up there, who is applying it, that picks the people to raise your kids, that says who gets what. They'll do that little chart like I talked about earlier with your question. So your brother that you might hate might get everything before your grandkid or something like that, right? So you want to control it. If you have an estate plan, some people, they're like, no, I went online and I did legal training or I did a rocket lawyer, and my colleagues who do contested litigation for probate love those because they almost always end up in a disaster in court because the paperwork's bad. I'm not saying that all stuff that you do on your own is bad, but those are. I just had to go to court to get someone out of a rocket lawyer mess. And it cost them, with the court costs and everything, about $7,500, and they had to wait 6 months to sit on a property. So if you think about it, better to spend that money and just do it right the first time and have you be able to dictate who gets your stuff. There's other people who say, well, I've been to a lawyer, and they're like, this guy's gonna do it for $1,500, and like, that's what I need. $1,500, he's gonna do it, it's the same quality. Well, not necessarily, because you can have a trust. You can do all the pretty paperwork, all the documents. They might not be customized to your family. Because I have yet to meet a family that doesn't have some kind of quirk, right? We've all got them. Or you might not have a quirk now, but someone's gonna get a quirk later on, okay? Like I had a client who had a son who was like, I'm telling you, he was like All-American, varsity this, and honor roll this, and all this stuff. He was going to Stanford, he was set, he was gonna be the trustee, he was gonna do all this stuff. Well, sadly, he got in a car accident, and he had a traumatic brain injury. So if we didn't, I'm a worrywart, so in my trust documents, I always plan for those things happening. But if that wasn't in there, he wouldn't have been able to get state aid, it would have been a big mess. So life happens, right? So if you're working with a state planning attorney, you wanna make sure that someone who you're calling, if you have a kid, adopt a kid, you win the lottery, still waiting for a client to win the lottery. Something big happens. You want that attorney to go back to not just that one-off. You need to have somebody that you have a relationship with, that you're comfortable with, who isn't gonna bill you 0.1 for every time you go back and call. I went out on my own in 2010 because I didn't like the way the law firms were making me treat my clients. So I've had business clients for 20 years that stay with me. The relationship is important because you learn each other, what's going on with them, and those things happen. So good set of documents, whether it's, $350 for online, those are probably the worst. If you have an attorney who just gives you the book and you put your book on the shelf and you never fund it, you never look at it, you never nothing, odds are it's not gonna work. You're still gonna end up in probate court. So just because you have the trust doesn't mean it's gonna work necessarily.
Can you talk about the difference between trust and a will?
Yeah, so a will is great. In a will, you can say where you want to get things, who you want to get things, when you want them to get it, you can do all that. A will is gonna have you go through probate. It does not prevent you from having to go through probate. I'll talk about probate more in a minute, but there's all kinds of things that.
In regards to what?
What?
In regards to what?
Your entire estate will have to go through probate if you have a will. If you don't have a will, you're going through probate. If you have a will, you're going through probate. If you also have a trust, you can avoid probate altogether.
But that's it, it depends on what you have. I mean, if you have a savings account,
If
and you have a beneficiary on it, you don't have a will or a trust, it doesn't need to go to probate.
You only have a savings account, it's a bank account, and you have a beneficiary on that bank account, then that bank will pay that money directly to your beneficiary.
Yes, and that
If
was,
that beneficiary is a minor,
it could go to probate.
the bank is gonna say, we can't give money to a minor.
Right.
You have to go to court and get a locked account. Okay? Then the court is gonna say you have to appoint someone a guardian of their assets. So then the guardian gets appointed, it's a locked account, it's public. That kid gets it when they're 18, whether you want it to wait till they're 25 or not, that kid's gonna get it when they're 18.
I guess my question was exactly what would trigger probate, not everything.
So assets over $180,000 in California
Okay.
are gonna trigger a full probate, unless you have a trust.
Got
If one of those assets is real property, it's still gonna trigger probate. If it's less than $180,000, and that's total, right? If it's less than $180,000, you can do a shortened process. You still have to do some paperwork, but it's a lot shorter, it's a lot cheaper.
It's sticky when you get into the real estate stuff, that's.
Anytime real estate's involved, you're going through probate.
But like I say, simple things like investment, savings accounts.
Yeah, but
That's pretty quick and easy.
If your kids or whoever you wanna give it to is already at the age you want them to get it,
Yeah.
then yeah, that can be pretty easy. Yeah, if they're not, or if by the time you pass away and they get that age, they have a drug problem, which I've seen happen, then unless you have the trust in place, they're just gonna get that money out. In the 90s, it just went up their nose, right? So it doesn't allow you to account for all those things. Okay? Or if you have somebody that's on state benefits for some reason, like the disabled for some reason, and they get a pile of money, all their state benefits are gonna stop until they spend all of that, and then they can reapply to have them kick in again. Versus if you had it go to a trust, the trust, the way I write it, the trust is gonna say, no, this person's disabled, so instead of distributing it to them, the trustee can hold the money and not pay out anything. So there's certain language, legalese, right, that I put in there, triggers the state to have to pay full benefits. Then the trustee can go on top of that and supplement. So, for instance, say there's $100,000. The kid gets or person gets $100,000, state benefits stop. They spend the $100,000, which is gonna go quick, right? Because if you're in any kind of facility, it's about $10,000 a month for basic.
So it's better to use it
Yeah.
as a supplement.
Yeah, because a supplement, you can invest it, and if you supplement it and you pay $700 a week or a month, and you invest it, that could last them decades.
So the trustee would handle it, divvy it out as needed.
Yeah, the trustee can handle it and help everybody get all the aid. The other thing is too, is that if those people get better, some people recover from catastrophic like strokes and stuff. People can get better. And they're functional and they're with it and they can manage their money and everything. There's good triggers in the trust that says, okay, well now you're better, so now you can actually get a distribution. So there's a lot of different planning that you can do, because these situations actually do happen.
Yeah.
Like people think that they don't, but they do. I've had clients where they come in and they're like, my kid's 18 and he's blown through his inheritance from his uncle. He just got $200,000. And I'm like, well, let me guess, he's got a lot of new friends, like new BFFs, right? And they're all partying together. And he's the head guy and he's feeling great because everybody wants to be around him. And then there's nothing you can do at that point. Once the person's got the money, you can't do anything about it, right? And what happens is probates are public. So people go out there and they look at the court records. And they look at those closed accounts for the kids and they say, what kid has gotten a guardian appointed? Once he becomes 18, where does he live? Okay, and they track him down.
Like hitting a lot of.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. I've seen some scary stuff happen. Yes, sir.
As a past Morgan Stanley stockbroker, annuities and IRAs have beneficiaries.
They do, and if you have a minor, again, you can appoint your trust the beneficiary until your kids are at the point where you want them to get it. Again, because you don't want that public locked account out there, just in case you pass it before. And all this stuff's flexible, right? Because you're having a relationship, hopefully with your attorney, where you come back and you say, you know what? This kid who we thought was gonna like rule the world, he's 24 and he's got a drug problem. But Sally here, who we thought, we didn't know if she was gonna make it through high school, she just graduated medical school, you know? And so you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna go back and we're gonna look at our trust and we're gonna say, let's move things around a little bit.
Yeah, I mean,
Right?
at a minimum, would you suggest that you review your will and trust every 5 years?
I say at the minimum every 3 years,
Yeah.
especially right now, life's changing fast for people. I have people though, and I tell all my clients, once you're a client, this is just how it is. If you refinance, call me. Because they pull the house out of your trust, do the refinance, and the banks are supposed to put it back in. Remember, only the things that are funded in the trust avoid probate. So I've had a couple of close calls where the bank was supposed to put it back in and didn't, or they filed them in the reverse order, so it ended up outside of the trust. And then I have to go to court and do a special petition and try to get that put back in the trust, and if the judge says, no, you can't do that, then it's full-blown probate just for the house. So I'm like, you know, it takes me 5 minutes to check. Usually I call Corey and say, hey, can you pull the deed and let me see which is the last one on record? But it's worth it. Or you win I'm telling you, when you put that lotto in it. If you win the lotto, you adopt a kid. Sometimes now people are adopting grandkids. Things happen. Any big life event, call me.
What's a lotto?
I don't know. But you'd have to call me before you get your check so we can have everything in place.
Most people may know this, but I thought it was important. Not only do you need to get the trust, but and then you did talk about it just now. You have to put your properties in that trust name.
Yes, we do. And so for mine, I always move my client's real property into their trust. Like I do the deed, I get it recorded, I handle that. A lot of attorneys don't. They'll say, here, go to the recorder, or you need to have that done. And so that's the trust that's in the shelf that's gonna be useless later on.
So what things don't you put in the trust?
It depends, right? If your kids are older and they're doing well, then you can name beneficiaries like on the IRAs and things like that on your retirement accounts.
Is it better to keep it out of the trust?
If you're close to the tax exemption amount, then it is. So right now, everybody gets 12.92 million free, right? Tax free. So if you're not close to that exemption amount, I'm not gonna worry about you. I'm gonna be more inclusive into that trust. If you're close to that tax exemption amount, then we're gonna start looking at ways to start to move things around. So right now, I mean, this comes up later, but right now it's 12.92. But in 2026, it's gonna come back down and it's gonna end up between 6 and 7 million because it's adjusted for inflation. So if you're close to that, now's the time to, do some extra tax planning. But that's another thing, some attorneys write the plans and some of the do-it-yourselfers and some of the, the less expensive people, they've got like the one plan, right? They're plugging in names. But if they don't make it flexible, then you're gonna have this plan, hopefully some form of it until you pass away, right? It's supposed to work that way. If you don't build it so it adjusts as the tax code adjusts, right? So I write mine to maximize everything possible in the tax code for whatever it is at that moment. If it's 12.92 or if it's 6 million, or when I started it was 1 million or 500,000, it's gonna adjust automatically. So yeah, if there's a big difference in the tax code, I'm gonna call my clients that it impacts. But the way that I do the trust initially should be able to expand and contract to deal with that. Yes.
Going back to wills, is a pour-over will the same thing as a regular will?
You know what it is? The reason it's called a pour-over wills always go with a trust. And it's supposed to be, like here's a trust and everything's supposed to be funded into the trust. But sometimes you don't know you have an asset or things are missed or the bank pulled it out to do a refi.
I thought it was
And
like
it's-
stuff like personal.
No, not necessarily. And then the stuff ends up outside, it pours out. It pours over the trust and then the will catches it. That's what that's for. And basically a pour over will is saying, I give everything to my trust. Okay? And it helps with that petition I need to do if the things weren't funded properly.
I need your phone number and you
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so we talked about this and like I was saying, everything's public, right? So Jackie Onassis's will is public. Jerry Garcia's will is public. Anything you file is gonna be with the court, it's public. Not everybody needs to know all that stuff. You might, as a person, not want them to know those things about you, but you definitely don't want whoever's getting the money to have that exposed.
What do you have a trust in no will?
If you have a trust in no will,
Sorry, I thought it was more.
if someone doesn't trust in no will, like that's my, like, it's always like, I'm a warrior, right? So I have a lot of like the just in case. So like if something's not funded, just in case I have the will. I think actually if you did a trust and somebody didn't do that for a will, it would be malpractice.
The company. Whoever's doing your trust is gonna tell you. what
It
you
should
need to
come
do.
together. It should come together.
Do you do independent reviews or do you still advise other people to do one after you've done the trust? For someone else to look it over?
Well, I've been doing it a while, so I'm pretty confident in mine that I write. I mean, I've had them tested. I've been practicing long enough that people have passed away and people have tried to challenge them and things like that. Over the years, you keep adding. You see problems, talk to colleagues, how they tell the war stories, what happens, so you keep adding to your documents to try to cover all those bases. The new one that I just added on to my plan, I've used several different documents to accomplish the goals, deals with dementia. Because we have advanced healthcare directives, right? Those are the, do you want to pull the plug, do you not? But they don't talk about what happens if someone has dementia. Someone has dementia, I've learned that they can forget how to swallow, or they don't want to swallow. So now and if there's no directive in advance, they will put a feeding tube and make that person stay alive. So now on all my estate plans, I've added it at no extra cost. I add this document that says, you pick, do you want the feeding tube? Do you want them not to try to feed you at all? Or like my personal one that I'm using for myself is, if I'm pushing away food, try and feed me. If I keep pushing it away, feed me whatever my favorite foods are. Because if I just eat ice cream for 2 weeks, that's the last thing I eat, then why not?
Who cares?
Right? It's lasagna, whatever it is. Let me eat everything I want to eat, and then when I push away that, then leave me alone. So we want to set out this stuff before you're incapacitated, because once you are, you can't make those decisions anymore.
So you're saying the healthcare directive does not cover that situation?
Healthcare directive does not cover that situation.
I thought a healthcare directive allows that person to make if they're power of attorney and healthcare directive, they
Healthcare
can
directive,
make those because you are incapacitated.
But it's not specific enough.
the healthcare directive says, typically what they say is, like, it's the whole pull the plug, don't pull the plug. Right? You have dementia, you're not in that situation. There's no plug they're pulling. They're not stopping efforts. And the healthcare directives typically kick in if you are more likely not to survive than not. Dementia people can live 10, 15 years, like just completely out of it. So it's a gap.
But they can't make decisions for themselves. It can deteriorate to the point where they can't make decisions for themselves mentally. So that's where the power of attorney and healthcare directive kick in.
Healthcare directive isn't gonna cover that circumstance though.
What's that?
The healthcare directive is not gonna cover that circumstance. It's this small, like, little loophole, like, or little hole in the thing, that is why I added this document, because you have to cover the whole thing. You know,
Well, that's what I'm curious, if it's to even something like that, I would think would be pretty straightforward with the healthcare directive, so there must be all kinds of stuff like that.
You think so, but it's not. Healthcare directives, you need to draft them. They're gonna cover many things, the whole pull the plug, don't pull the plug if I'm on a respirator kind of situation. But there are now those other situations of so many elements where someone could be completely, they could have brain activity, right? If they don't have any brain activity, then you could stop everything under healthcare directive. But if you have dementia, those people can have brain activity, right? They've got a lot of thoughts going on. It might not be the same thoughts that we're seeing happen, but they're not gonna qualify under an advanced healthcare directive. So that's one of the things, over the years, right, you see things that happen and plug the holes.
I have a question. My mom just said this to me today. She said, I think I have to redo my DNR because I think she thinks it has to be done every year. Is that true? She goes to her scan meetings and things and,
So,
and she does have a little dementia. We're just starting on it.
okay, so if she's still, even if she has a little dementia, she can still have like those lucid moments where she can make her decisions.
Definitely.
Then this is the time to get in there and talk to her and have her do all this stuff and say what she wants to happen and what she doesn't want to happen. And then the advanced healthcare directive that I would do and replace that DNR and the dementia directive would be in place in perpetuity until she changed it. So it depends on that form. Sometimes you go to the hospital and they're like, here's sign this. Here's the DNR, sign this, right?
Every time you go in there.
Yeah. So my clients, I do their forms, they do their advanced healthcare directive, now the dementia directives, and a HIPAA waiver. And I tell all my clients, here's an electronic form, email it to your doctor. They put it in the file. Email it to the hospital you always go to. It'll be in your file.
Make the kids carry it with them.
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes, so they have it available. The other thing is the HIPAA directive, or the HIPAA waiver, because that's who can talk to their doctors, not make decisions necessarily, just someone who can talk to them. So if your kids are out of state and your best friend is a nurse, you might want that best friend nurse to be able to talk to your doctor and then be the kind of relay to talk to your kids. Without a HIPAA waiver with her name on it, doctor can't do it.
So this guy goes to his doctor and the doctor says, you've got cancer and memory loss. The guy says, at least I don't have cancer.
So we're totally off the track of this slideshow now, but that's okay. But you know what, you have to be able to talk about it and laugh about it. And some of my clients can't, they need help talking to their parents about these things. And so, I mean, it sounds kind of morbid, but I've been invited to family meetings to kind of like break ice and like start talking stories, because then it's easier for people to talk about. Some people can't deal with the thought of themselves dying, or their spouse dying, or their kid dying.
A lot of people, surprisingly, yeah.
Yeah, and you need help, right? Some people start the process, learn early on, you start the process, if you don't like kind of push people along,
They don't want to talk about that.
they don't want it, they don't want it, they feel like when they sign the documents, they're gonna die.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, no, it's Murphy's Law, sign the documents, you're good, right? It's like if you bring your umbrella, it's not gonna rain,
That's the only given, is that you are gonna die.
right? I mean, one day you're gonna die, but you're not gonna die because you're gonna do that you signed it. But, so the other thing about probate is it's just so expensive. So in California, probate, the fees, the attorney's fees are by statute. So it doesn't matter on the attorney, if they do 2 hours worth of work, they're gonna get paid a certain amount of money. On $1 million estate, they're gonna get paid, what's it? $22,000.
Yeah, I was gonna say 20.
The executor's gonna get paid $22,000. And then you gotta pay, what?
I'm sorry, you said the executive, like the family?
If there's no will, and it's just, some family member steps up and says, okay, so Sally died, right? And Sally didn't die with the will. So her brother Joe goes to court and says, I'll be the executor. that judge is gonna award Joe about 22 grand on $1 million estate for all the effort he's gonna have to do. And it might actually be a lot of work.
Yeah.
But it might not be a lot of work. But that's how it's gonna go. So some people are like, I don't wanna pay, $3,500 for an estate plan because it's so much money. Like, okay, but your estate's gonna lose tens of thousands of dollars later on if you spend all that.
I was, in fact, when this was important, happened to a personal friend of mine, well, he passed away and he didn't have a will and trust. And a lot of people don't realize that going through the probate, whoever inherits the house, it's that, is responsible for the house, has to take care of it, they have to take the mortgage payment, taxes, correct, and
Well,
they're incurring costs.
they don't have to, but if they don't, then the house is gonna get foreclosed on, get tax liens on it. See, if you have a trust, right, everything's funded into the trust, that bank account, the money's going into the trust, so the trustee can go immediately with the death certificate, start paying bills. So they're maintaining the house, they're paying the bills, they're maintaining the rental properties, they're taking in the income from the rental properties, all that stuff, just like if the person were alive almost. Without that, and say that same person with those same assets either had a will without a trust or no will, they're in probate court. That executor, the person who's in charge of that, may or may not want to advance the money to make those house payments until the court gives them authority over the bank accounts. That could take 6 months.
Typically, probate's what, close to a year?
Oh, if like pigs were flying outside, it would be a year. It can take, I would say if you have a full-blown probate right now in Orange County, you're looking at, a year and a half would be like a miracle. You're probably looking at 2 years, and that's if it's uncontested.
Yeah.
That's if there's no problems all along the way.
Okay.
I have one that I inherited from another attorney. Someone died without a will, didn't have any kids, had a lot of relatives, and it was started in 2014. We have a hearing next month.
May I share a horror story on that?
Yeah.
True story again. So my client's nephew, a single man in his 50s, died without will, trust, whatever, died all of a sudden of a heart attack. The court goes to probate court. Probate court decides next of kin is my client's husband. So they're going through probate, and this is during COVID, okay? So if you think that time frame was long, try COVID time frame. And
They're still catching up.
Yeah, and so in the midst of that, my client's husband dies. So, starts all over again.
Also, let's say you've got an account at Schwab or Fidelity. You got $1 million plus in there, make it a trust.
Yeah, that's one of the things if you put,
Not a joint, not an individual, make it a trust.
you want to
Why
fund,
that? Because it does everything she's been talking about.
if it's not in the trust account, if it's not under the trust name, it's not funded to the trust, it's probate. Or if there's a beneficiary, then it's straight to the beneficiary. And if that beneficiary is a minor, you got it.
That's if the beneficiary's a minor.
Yeah, or you
Only if
can,
it's a
or
minor.
maybe it's not, maybe the beneficiary is 20. And do you really want him to get that 2 million that was in that account? Like, literally Schwab will send him a check for $2 million. You don't want that to happen. You want to govern. So I did my trust, I'm a single mom, I did my trust when my son was like 6 months old. Yeah, I caught him rolling from the grave, right? He's almost 18, so now I kind of know more who he is, so I've adjusted it. But I didn't know how he was gonna be done back then, right? So you can build in incentives. You can say, if you go to college, you'll get more money earlier. Otherwise, you'll still get the money, but you're gonna wait longer.
25 or 30.
Well, or later. I'm telling you, I was mean. If he didn't go to college, he wasn't getting anything until he was 40, because I wanted him to start a career.
That's right.
Right? I didn't want these, I've seen so many kids, friends, and now when I'm adult people, it's horrible. I said, if you get married, I'll pay for your honeymoon, out of the trust, But you have to wait till you're at least a certain age to get married, because I didn't want to get married at 20. Okay, I said when you're 16, if you have good grades, you can have a car as long as you maintain your grades. But that car is going to be the equivalent of a Honda Civic. Because I don't know what cars are going to be around at that point, right? So you can build in these incentives, which you can't do just naming a beneficiary designation.
Warren Buffett says his kids can get enough money to be anything they want to be, not to be nothing.
And it's really true. And I've seen it happen so many times. I have a friend who, her husband, when he was 18, got $250,000. So he blew off college because he didn't need to go to college. He was going to go to college later when it was all done. Never went back to college. Never learned how to manage money. Didn't get that start on his resume for a job. So he didn't really kick in until he was about 35. So you're delayed. You can help them with their financial background, and you can help them with their financial education, or you can hinder them.
Which brings up another good point, and that's picking a trustee.
Yeah, I always tell people, everybody in the room has the money people that are practical, they're good with money, they balance their checkbook, they know where everything is. You have other people, hopefully, who will hold their hand, who will, thank you. Who will hold their hand, make sure their hair's washed, those kind of people. There's different jobs. Sometimes that person, or those people, is the same person, if you're lucky. Sometimes it's not. We divide up jobs. When I go through what I call family planning session, that's one of the things we do. Talk about who's in your life that could do these roles. And if there's nobody, there's third parties that you can hire. And there's third parties that you wouldn't hire, so you can be careful about that.
You're not an adult until you're about 30.
So we talked about that. Okay, healthcare directives, if it needs to work when you need it, we talked about healthcare directives. Voting techniques that don't work. It was the name of the beneficiary on account, just doing it like that, there's all kinds of problems with it.
Say that again.
If you name a beneficiary on an account, that there's some problems with doing it that way. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So that's a technique that you gotta look at, if it's appropriate at that time for that family. Same thing, owning property joint tenancy. Joint tenancy, if one person dies, the other person automatically gets the whole thing.
Right.
Well, that person, say the husband dies, the wife gets it, she's still alive, so you're like, what's the problem, right? Well, the wife goes on a cruise and meets Julio, right? Julio romances the wife. Right? Julio romances that wife. And the next thing you know, if you didn't do your estate plan with me ahead of time, it's so loose that your wife has that window where she can just give everything to Julio and your kids get nothing.
Right.
So you can, with proper estate planning, you can govern how much discretion the person who's left is going to get. And a lot of
Julio
times,
clause.
what?
You have to put in the Julio clause.
Yeah, we do put in a Julio clause because I've seen it happen. So we talk about,
If you put living trust for everything, can you exclude a marriage partner? Like, not your spouse, not my spouse. But I mean, like, let's say you're looking at everything, all your kids, but maybe you don't like your daughter's husband or something. And you're thinking, can you wait? So I'm not saying they're into a particular friend. Like, for a friend, I'm asking for a friend. Can you say, if you ever divorce, you get no part of this?
okay, so remember, once your kids get, or once a person gets money, you can't take it back from them and say, oh, but you got divorced 10 years later. Okay, if they commingle that money, their soon-to-be ex-spouse is gonna get a big chunk or half of that money. There are ways, if you have those concerns, also if your beneficiary is in a high-risk profession where they get sued a lot, there are ways to do what I call lifetime asset protection trust, where for their lifetime, they don't ever just get the money straight, but they have access to it as they need it, but it's up to the trustee to give it to them. Like say say, say you're the beneficiary, but your thing's all tied up in your trust, right? Because your mom did this lifetime asset protection trust. And you wanna buy a house. So then you're gonna go to the trustee and you're gonna ask the trustee and say, I wanna take out money from my trust to buy this house for the down payment. And that trustee can put down that down payment for you.
Who's the trustee, who would a trustee be in that case, like our lawyer?
The lawyer should not be your trustee because they play a different role. You need a team of the right people. If you have a lawyer who's saying, I'm gonna be your trustee, like, flag, right?
But it's probably a family.
It's probably another family member or it could be a company. Yeah. Yeah, so I can help, like, work through that and figure out who that would be. So that's an elevated type of plan.
So you mentioned if her daughter commingled the money with the spouse, that's the key word. So if this person's daughter kept the money separate that she inherited, is the spouse not entitled to
If
it?
she kept it separate, she never commingled it, it should be, the family law attorney should be able to argue that that's just hers. Because an inheritance comes to somebody as separate property, always in California. Other states are different. Okay?
Yeah, it's inherited money. If she took that money and say, put it in an account, that would always be her money, period.
If you can trace it,
Yeah.
so in that family law action, you can
To
trace
maintain
that money.
that traceability, yes.
Yeah, but it doesn't often happen where they actually just keep it separate.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So the other thing of taxes, we talked before about estate taxes. Everybody's like, oh God, I want to pay estate taxes. I bought a tax, Yeah, but most people, don't really have the tax problem because they're under the exemption amount. Again, you want to plan for it though, just in case that number changes. Whoever's doing your estate plan, they need to deal with income. Because if you say, I want my kids to get a third at 25, a third at 30, and the remainder at 35, but you're not paying out the income every year that those trust assets are earning, then the trust is gonna pay trust income tax on that amount. And that hits, what is it? It hits 37% as soon as that trust makes $14,000. It's astronomical. So usually what we do is we say, estimate how much the income's gonna be. And we say, heck, Joe's gonna be in school. If he's in school, he can just get the income. He's gonna get $1,000 a month in income. Then the trust doesn't pay any tax on it. It's taxed at Joe's level, and Joe's tax basis is way below that. So there's estate tax, there's trust income tax, and then of course there's the whole property tax. 19, that's a fiasco, I think, in California. And then Pat talked before about the step up in basis. Why you want to do that step up in basis. You want your kids to inherit property. One thing that happens a lot is people say, I want to qualify for Medicare, I want to qualify my mom for Medicare, she has a house. And even when you call the Medicare office, they'll say, you have to sell the house. She can't own any assets. Well, that is the worst advice in the world. The worst advice in the world. Because as soon as mom sells the house and you get the money, then it's counted against her and she's not going to qualify for Medicare until that's spent. If you have somebody who's going at that point where they have assets, they're approaching the time where they need Medicare because they have to go to a facility or something like that, there's planning that we can do, okay? The mom should, in that situation, should keep the house. And so long as she says she has an intent to return to the house, it's not counted against her. Okay, I've seen people make literally that happen so many times. Where they're like, well, we already sold the house. It's a mess. It's a mess. So just call before those things happen. Sometimes it's an emergency and I deal with those too. The other thing, in the family law planning sessions that I do is we go through how to design your estate plan. We go through what's unique about your family. It's nothing I haven't heard anything new for quite a while, so I'm waiting for someone to come up. But we also do a very careful inventory of all your assets. Because you may not know, sitting here, you're thinking, okay, I bank at Bank of America, have a house, but you had a job like 3 jobs ago where you had a little 401k, you forget about that. There's assets out there that you think about. And if you die without dealing with them, they go to the state of California and their unclaimed property department. And right now, the state has over $12 billion and they're waiting for people to claim it. So part of my process is that, you'll end up with a spreadsheet that has everything on it, where you know exactly where everything is. And you need that whether you're doing your state planning or not.
Does that get covered in a pour over? In a pour over will, if you've forgotten a 401k?
If you've forgotten a 401k, it could get covered in a pour over will. I do some extra documents though, because in California, there's something you can do called a Hegstead petition, where you can take those assets that aren't funded into the trust and try to push them back in. And at 100% success rate, knock wood, on doing my Hegstead petitions. But that's because when I'm doing someone's estate plan, I prepare my exhibits for that petition document then and have them sign it. So I'm a really like a just in case, wake up at 3 in the morning, kind of worry about stuff. So I always think like if I go to court, I want something I can blow up human side with like highlighting, right? And say, see judge, see jury, this is where it's supposed to go. So I build in a lot of things ahead of time, just in case someone messes up and doesn't find something. The other thing I think is huge that I've just gotten into in the last couple of years is that, like, it's not just money, right? Like, it's your family story. It's like the funny jokes. It's that somebody always, I don't know. I've heard all kinds of things. Someone always did something, and that stuff's not getting passed down generation to generation to generation. I had a friend who had a voicemail from her dad, and she listened to it. The dad died. She had that thing on her phone for like 3 years, and then it was his voice, right? She could hear his voice. And one day she called me just like hysterical that she had accidentally erased that voicemail. And that's it. Like, she's never gonna hear her dad's voice again. So what I've added onto my plan is I do a little video. And I do a little, it's like an hour interview, and people tell stories. They tell some funny stories, right? I've had clients who then, their kids have used them at their funeral service, like showed a segment of it. And it's a program where it's my gift to my clients. I always do like the first one, but if they want to add to it later on, they can do that. So it's important, right? It's that money, people are going to spend it. Yes, it's great, and yes, it really helps, and it's so expensive to live in Orange County, but those kind of memories are just irreplaceable.
Great.
I have a recording of my grandmother singing some old songs from back in the South, some that are not.
See, and
Couldn't blame for anybody.
right, but that's
She
That's
went into
true.
a little recording studio with her husband, and he turned the pages. She didn't say who she was, nothing. She did it in the late 60s, and she sang 4 songs. And
that's like the most precious
she bought a
thing.
$1 guitar, Sears and Roebuck cabinet.
It's quite a lot of money back then.
Yeah. I've had clients where it was a couple, and they were both in their 90s already, but they were like totally with it mentally. And their banter, like we just ended up doing like a 2-hour video because their banter was just hysterical, right? And that, when their kids found out after they passed away that I had that, the kids, we had like a family meeting, and the kids literally, they were like laughing and crying at the same time, but they were like, they didn't even want to read out the assets at that meeting. They were like, no, that's good for tonight. Like that filled them up, right? So it's both sides, right? It's the money side and then the warm side. So how to start and get it done? By coming here tonight, if you complete this form that's in the back, I'll do a free family wealth planning session. It's about 2 hours, depending on your circumstances. I send you homework ahead of time so that it can be a productive evening. Because if I know ahead of time you have 3 houses, 2 kids, 1 kid, was adopted, if you donated eggs, whatever, like people have circumstances. If I know it ahead of time, then I can make the meeting like super productive and we can really tailor it to you guys. And at the least, you'll end up walking out of the meeting educated, thinking about your options, and with an asset inventory. And at most, you're gonna go ahead and design your estate plan and start the process. But if you come and see me, I'm really not a hard sell. If you come and see me, I want you to do it with me because you're comfortable with it, you picked a plan that is comfortable for you price-wise, you feel cared for, you feel heard, and the design is how you want it. So typically that meeting's $750. But again, if you fill out this little form and give it to me ahead of time, I will, do that meeting for free. And I'll just send you the link and you do it all confidential on the computer.
Okay, what if you already have a living will in trust and I want you to review it, because I haven't looked at it for 6 years.
Yeah, it's in the shelf, right?
Yeah, it's on the shelf. And
Yeah.
my estate attorney was down in Clark Road. Things have changed.
Things have changed.
So to be able to look at that without you get.
So give us a team, that drives me crazy as an attorney, because he should be checking with you, or you should feel comfortable enough that you're gonna call him and say, hey, things have changed. But what we can do is I would still send you the link, you'd still come in for the family love time session, and I would invite you to bring in your documents. Or if you have them in electronic form, then there's a place when I send you the link to answer the questions that you can upload it. And we can work out, because it has happened, right? Where I look at it and I'm like, you're good, right? Like right now, you're good. That's, that's okay. Or I might say, oh shoot, this is missing different things. So you might say your trust is okay, but your health directive is not, or whatever. So it would really be on an individual basis. But I would still do that, if you do this separate, you guys are nice enough to come out tonight. I'll be happy to do that initial meeting for free. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the last thing I have to say is you need a team, okay? So you need the tax advisor, you need the realtor, you need the, all these people in your life, an insurance broker. Your attorney should be willing to talk to and want to talk to people in your life. So that, because I can write almost any contract anyway at this point, but if it doesn't work for Pat, when she's doing the taxes to maximize your tax refund, you're not gonna be happy with it. We all have to work together. And I just saw on social media, there's a company that's advertising estate planning software for financial advisors that says your clients don't need to go hire an attorney, just plug in their information in the system and you can do it for them. So, and just like I know an attorney, he makes me crazy, but he's also willing to hold a realtor, so you can do your probate with him and he can sell your house. Okay, so there's a lot of people out there. People gotta the whole stay in your lane kind of thing. If you have somebody who doesn't, maybe they know more, or maybe that should be a big flag to say maybe I should need to talk to someone else. And that's if you use me or another attorney. People, you gotta know what to bring to the experts. And any professional in any field, like you go to the doctor, if your doctor's like, no, I know everything, well, hopefully you don't have a serious cardiac issue, right, where you need to go to a specialist for it. Your doctor should be calling out and saying, okay, you need to go see a pulmonologist, now you need to go see this. And if your professionals in other walks of life aren't saying that to you, then there's concern. And the team members should want to work together, right? Because they're going to do the best. You can't go to people who have an ego and can't talk to the person's other team members or create something that it's got to be a team, right? And you have to be the one that they advocate for. So that's
What kind of insurance broker?
So for my business clients, I talk to their insurance brokers twice a year.
What kind of
And so for
life insurance you mean, or?
for individuals, it's usually life insurance. for businesses, it's all kinds of insurance. It's liability insurance, it's errors and omissions insurance, directors and officers insurance, all that kind of thing.
So long-term